What's up, everybody? So, welcome to Deploy This, a little miniature series about creating a Next.js application with TypeScript and Tailwind just because I like those, and seeing what it entails to deploy this application on multiple platforms. So, my usual chosen deployment platform of choice for Next.js applications is with Vercel, simply because, well, it's the same core dev team, so it's pretty purpose built. You can use Vercel to deploy, plenty of other types of applications, but it is really seamless deploying a Next.js application with Vercel. So we will explore with Vercel, Heroku, maybe AWS, maybe Azure, maybe GCP, maybe even DigitalOcean. We'll see. But for now, let's go ahead and see what it takes to create a Next.js app with TypeScript and Tailwind enabled. Next.js is pretty rad. It's a really quick way to get a full stack application started with minimal fuss. They do have TypeScript support, but it does not come enabled out the box. So you do have to apply one little flag. They do have examples as well, and examples are basically like even more opinionated toolkits of Next.js. In the event that you wanted some additional capabilities to Next.js, you can use an example flag, and that will let you add in. They even have some like ones with TypeScript, pre-built in that way. We're not going to go through an example per se, just because it's pretty easy to attach that, but you can add Apollo and Redux, cookie-based authentication. If you wanted to use something like Passport for auth, they've got that enabled. So you can just say example and then provide one of these strings, and they'll install a bunch of pre-configured stuff with Next.js. So it's pretty cool that they do that, but that's really not all that necessary. So let's go ahead and get our directory started and see what it entails to get this instantiated. I go to my demo folder, and I'm going to make a folder for this little series, Deploy This. Oh my goodness. All right. So, in order to create a Next.js application, pretty easy. So, you've probably, if you're watching this video, have utilized Create React App, which is a utility provided by the React team to create a React application really easily. Well, the Next team has a similar utility called Create Next App. And so we'll use npx to execute and create a Next.js application using that utility. So npx create React app, and we're going to run that TS flag. Oh my goodness, I am not on my game this morning. Let me, oops. Needed to nuke that directory because I need to give the directory name as an argument to create. Oh my goodness. And I just spoke about Create React App. I meant to say Create Next App. And if I want to use TypeScript as well, I need to provide the latest version as well of Create Next App, or not latest, or sorry, not lastest. That is the complete opposite of what I want to do. I want the newest, not the last. Latest, L-A-T-E-S-T. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so that should get us going. All right, and it's going to install. Let's take a little peek around the examples again. This is pretty rad. Like they even have it established by like area, So if you wanted some authentication built in or some database stuff built in, like it's pretty hardy. I don't quite know. I really haven't poked around with the examples too much because usually I kind of apply everything manually myself, but it is really rad that they do have this enabled out the box. And like, I think this is just like the raw format that you would get out of the box by using that example flag. So it's pretty cool that they have these demos freely available. All right. Now, I did say I wanted to, in addition to TypeScript, I wanted to use Tailwind. So I need to install a few packages for that. So I'm going to install some dev dependencies, which will be Tailwind, CSS, auto prefixer, and post CSS. Post CSS, one word. Cool. I also need to create my Tailwind configuration file and my post CSS config file. You can do that by hand. You can also just run npx tailwind init-p. And there we go. So even a little easier than saying like touch tailwind config.js, touch post CSS config.js, and having to populate that with data. All right, let's finally get this open in VS Code. And oh my goodness, let me drag it so it doesn't clip beyond the boundaries of my recording. All right. For my Tailwind config, I need to specify what files to watch. So right now with Next.js, I only have, React files written inside of this pages directory. I eventually might make something like a components directory at the top level. So I'm going to keep that in mind. I'm not going to make it right now, but I'll keep that in mind when establishing my Tailwind config. So I need to specify in my content where I need to look. So I need to provide a string of kind of like almost a glob-like regular expression of the paths to files. So I will tell this to look in pages and any level depth of directory for any file that begins with. I'll be a little gracious here. I am writing everything in TypeScript, but I will have my bases covered for JavaScript as well. May as well. Like I said, I might make a components directory. I might not. Who knows? All right. We've got our Tailwind config established. Cool, cool. I need to, in my global styles, import Tailwind. So, let's see. At Tailwind base, at Tailwind component, at Tailwind utilities. Utilities. Man, I didn't realize today was going to be a spelling test as well. Goodness. Utilities. Okay, that looks like it's matching up. I can never remember if that's component or components. let's see. Components. Okay, cool. I'm glad I checked the documentation, because otherwise I may have been scratching my head at why maybe only half of my classes are working. Okay, so I'm going to make a smaller application. I do want to show you guys the Next.js features. It at just kind of a quick high-level overview, because this is really focused more on deployment than actually development of the application, but I still did want to show you the process of at least starting and creating a Next.js app with TypeScript, which, you know, that was super easy. I just added a flag --ts, and look at that. It created a ts config for us, and it made some TypeScript files for us. And adding Tailwind, which we saw, just really wasn't all that bad. Let's see. What does the container class look like? Just provide some padding. Let's see. I don't need it. Goodbye. We're utilizing Tailwind. I still need to keep my global CSS for at least like the kind of reset of setting my browser defaults to 0, and of course to install Tailwind. But for this, let's see. So just center aligning some stuff with Next. So using the grid system here in lieu of the flex box system, we're using height screen to make everything the full height of the screen vertically, and we're using place item center to center align vertically and horizontally. So I should have some nice little center stuff here. Now, going into some of the cool things about Next is anything I place in this pages directory, you know, you'll note that I don't have like React Router DOM installed. Well, if I create a page, you know, called spaghetti, it's going to automatically build a route for that. It handles routing completely based upon the file names, which is really cool. And you can even make dynamic path names, you know. If I made a folder called spaghetti and I put an index.tsx in there and I had a React component, if I navigated in my application to /spaghetti, it would serve the index. And if you wanted a dynamic route, you can put square brackets in as your placeholder, and it's going to act like a React Router DOM URL parameter. So I could say like sauce type or whatever, and that means if I routed to /spaghetti I guess spaghetti should be served with like a red sauce. So if I did like spaghetti /red sauce and navigated to that, you'd be able to land on this component, and you'd be able to extract from the URL sauce type as a URL parameter, and you'd be able to extract, you know, red sauce or whatever from that. And so that's how it handles dynamic routing. So traditionally, like, you'll see like ID as the pretty much universal one, but it doesn't have to be that. You can have it serve as whatever variable you want to add. So that's how it handles routing, which is really, really cool. So you don't have to worry about React Router DOM or creating a routing tree. It just does it automatically. One of the reasons why Next.js is just a really nice development kind of ecosystem. You'll notice here as well in my pages folder, I have an API folder, and that's actually where the backend is living. It's basically just an Express app minus Express, where you pretty much only have routes. And just like with how routing is handled on the front end, routing is handled the exact same way on the back end. So we actually have, like, if you imagine this as express paths /API/hello gets you that, which is pretty nifty. If I had a backend route for, pizza, I could have an index. So if you made a GET request to /API/pizza, you could have it serve up all pizzas at this route, and then you could have it, just like with front end routing, you could have type or ID, and that would serve as the dynamic placeholder. So if I made a fetch request to /API/pizza/ I'll say Supreme, then we would hit up this one instead of this file, and I would be able to extract the ID as a request query item, and the value of ID would be Supreme. So all of the routing that happens for client-side stuff also happens for server-side stuff within this API directory. So if you're not accustomed to that structure, it might seem a little weird at first, but it is very convenient being able to work on API development just adjacent to the client-side files that will be utilizing those API routes. So I'm going to make my own. Let's see. Let's see. I'll call this platforms.ts. I'm going to delete API hello. And I need to import next request handlers. So basically the functions that we had in hello, I'm just rewriting for my own custom purposes. I guess I could have rewritten them there, but we will have next request and next response as our two types for our request and response respectively. Cool. I need to make a default export. And I mean, I know that the structure is a little weird, but this is going to feel very Express-like under the hood. So, we have a request and response within this handler function. Like, seems pretty Express-like. Now this, I'm not going to make anything too complex here. Like I said, I just wanted to show a very kind of quick high-level overview of Next. So we're just going to send a status code of 200, which, like, hey, look at this. Very similar API calls to what Express has. And Vercel, Heroku, DigitalOcean, and AWS. Yeah, we'll see where this takes us. We'll have fun with this series. So let's go ahead and get that in place. And the files that we're working on, so we're done with our API development. If I make a fetch request to /API/platforms, it's going to default to a GET request. We're going to get this sent as a response. because we're not validating the request method. So technically a post, put, or delete, or patch, or any other type of request to API/platforms will get that as a response, but we will be making a GET request ourselves to /API/platforms and receiving that as a response. So I need to import useState and useEffect from React. Platforms is just going to be an array of strings, so I don't really need to define an interface for that per se, but we will have that generic pass to our useState. So say const platforms, set platforms is equal to useState. We'll initialize that as an empty array, and the type we will assign it is a string array. And this is occupying like a third of my screen, so let's see how much I can minimize it. Much better. All right, create our useEffect here, and let's go ahead and fetch API/platforms. Alright, we fetch it, return the parsed JSON, and interestingly enough, I saw this pattern recently that I don't know, I'd never thought about utilizing, but just directly chaining my callback item into the resultant functions. If, for example, my item I want to pass in is just a function like a state dispatcher or a console error, you know. I especially like it on console errors because I hate saying .catch error as my callback item, return a call to console error with error as the callback item, or as the function argument. Like, we're writing the same exact thing as this. It just, I always felt this was like so like polluted code, and so I saw somebody doing this recently. I was like, oh, like that's great, I love that. And so I just adapted it for anything else, you know. I don't know, maybe you would want to explicitly see like your arguments being passed here, but I do like the cleanliness of this. So just a little aside, a little tangent on that. And then, let's see. Ooh, let's also, let me go to my CSS and give my document body some of Tailwind's. We'll give it like a slate background. So just a slightly like off-white so my eyes don't like bleed from bright white stuff. So we've got this here. Let's see. We'll be fancy, do some text indigo. Have that as our header, and within this div we'll create some paragraphs with our platforms. So we'll map over platforms, and for each platform, which I'll just call PL here. I need a key, and let's see, I don't have anything except those strings, so I will grab the index when mapping over everything and provide that there. Although PL is kind of ambiguous because I'm going to be using paragraphs, so whatever. We'll roll with that. I'll make a nice key here. Platform. What am I doing? I guess I could have also used the string as a key, because they all will be unique anyway. Whatever. You know what? Why not? We'll include that as well. Let's get those unique keys everywhere. Alright, so we've got our platform, and let's throw up some slightly lighter indigo colored text. So we'll do that, and cool. Okay, so that should be, let's see, our application. I probably should be testing this more frequently. I also need to get like a linter for my CSS that actually recognizes those Tailwind directives. Let's see. Oh, because I've got, I was like, why are these spaced so far apart? Because I've got this as place item center, and they're not the same child element. They're two distinct sibling elements, so they're going to be spaced pretty far apart. Let me adjust that real quick. So I need the H1 here, which means that this kind of looks like crap. Also, you know, when I'm doing my development, like, this is standard browser zoom, and sometimes when I'm doing demos, I zoom into like 500%, so I typically get my sizes like horribly established. So let me zoom to purely 100%, so that way we can actually get this looking okay. Also, let me center align these paragraphs, just because it looks like crap otherwise. And then also, I've forgotten what the extension is, but with Tailwind, I do have an extension that reorders like stuff based on like if it's a utility or if it does spacing or something. And so that way, like if you have margin or padding that you're applying, you might have that, you know, as you develop in multiple spots, but it will by default move like margin and padding all the way to the end of your class names. So that way you have consistent classes everywhere. Phenomenal extension. Headwind. That's a class sorter. There we go. Yeah, phenomenal. You can see the little example here where it's going to move like text white to the front and MX auto all the way to the end. There we go. Or sorts it at least in a somewhat organized fashion. All right. Well, it's still a little too tiny for my tastes. But I will go down the rabbit hole of messing around with styling for a little bit. But yeah, so that is creating our Next.js application with TypeScript and Tailwind. And I know that this series is deploy this, but at least we have the application created to deploy, which you can now clone yourself in the link down in the repo. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you can see the next ones. And you can do all of this yourself while following along. So I'll catch you in the next part. Catch you later.